Imagine you receive a letter with a single chilling message, a precise date and time. Your time. A countdown, not to some event, but to your own final breath. What would you do? How would you live? Here's a man, Paul, who found himself facing that exact question. A man who thought he had years to work, to plan, to save for later. But that letter, it changed everything. In the next few minutes, we'll dive deep into the hidden fears we all carry, the comfort of routines, the lies we tell ourselves about someday, and the raw urgency of facing the unknown. Stick around, because by the end, you might just question everything you thought you knew about time. And if you've ever felt like life is slipping by, this story may have a truth you need to hear. Paul was a man of routines. Every morning, the same alarm, the same route to work, the same conversations. Life was predictable, manageable. But the day he opened that letter, everything changed. The date was just months away, and at first he brushed it off, laughed it off even. A prank, he told himself. A sick joke. But as days passed, the date echoed in his mind, creeping into his thoughts, his dreams. Could it be real? What if it was? As the supposed deadline inched closer, something strange began to happen. Paul started to see his life in ways he hadn't before. Each minute, each encounter felt loaded with a new kind of weight. He became aware of things he'd ignored. The colleague he barely knew, the friends he hadn't called in months, the forgotten goals, the risks he'd been too afraid to take. You see, knowing his time might be running out forced Paul to confront something most of us avoid every day. The possibility that we're wasting precious time. And the irony? He didn't need that letter to tell him this. He just needed a reason to see it. Psychologists say that routines bring comfort, but they can also trap us. We choose the known over the unknown, the safe over the extraordinary. But here's a dark truth. In the end, comfort won't spare us from regret. Paul's life, like many of ours, was built around the idea that there would always be more time to chase his real dreams someday. But now, someday wasn't promised. What if that's true for all of us? What if someday never comes? As the date on the letter drew near, Paul's world grew sharper, richer, more intense. He lived with an urgency he'd never felt. The things he once ignored now seemed precious. The taste of his morning coffee, the warmth of the sun, the sound of laughter. He'd always thought he'd have time to experience life fully, but he'd only now started to live. On the last day, Paul found himself surprisingly calm, ready even. He'd done all he could to live a lifetime in those final weeks, making amends, reaching out, living honestly. And just like that, the moment passed. Paul was still here. Was it a prank? A coincidence? It didn't matter anymore. In that instant, Paul understood that the letter wasn't about death. It was about life. The real question it posed wasn't, when will you die? But when will you start living? So here's the question for you too. What would you do if you knew your time was borrowed? Would you wait another day, another year, for the right time? Or would you start now, embracing the life you've been putting off? Because the truth is, we're all on borrowed time. Maybe the real difference is whether we choose to realize it, or keep waiting until it's too late. If this story stirred something in you, if you're asking yourself what you do with a second chance, you're not alone. Maybe the real journey begins once you've tasted success, once you've broken free from fear. So, if you're ready to think about what's next, stick around. There's a whole world waiting for those who are ready to live beyond borrowed time.